Go.
Hello, my name is Savannah Arnell, and today I will be delivering a speech about how I believe assisted suicide should be legal in the United States. Working in healthcare, I constantly see suffering patients and families who are powerless at the hands of death. Assisted suicide would allow a suffering patient to die painlessly with their dignity intact without any extraordinary measures. The right to assisted suicide should be legally granted to those who are terminally ill to allow them to leave this earth with their self-respect, ease their agony, and save their families from financial bankruptcy. First, I'm going to explain the history of assisted suicide and what assisted suicide is. Assisted suicide is when a patient who is terminally ill has the right to die with the assistance of a physician. The Terry Cervanto case fired public opinion in Florida. In 1990, Terry Cervanto went into cardiac arrest, and after being resuscitated, she spent 15 years in a vegetative state, which means she was awake but displayed no signs of awareness. After many debates, appeals, and petitions, her husband's request was finally granted to end her suffering and by taking her off of life support in 2005. In 1997, Pamela Ferguson wrote an article in the Journal of Medical Ethics, Causing Death or Allowing Death to Die, Developments in Law. In this article, she wrote about Dr. Nigel Cox, who had a patient, Miss Boyles, who was a terminally ill patient with rheumatoid arthritis. Miss Boyles was in immense pain as she had ulcers on her limbs, her heart was beginning to calcify, and her lungs were failing. Dr. Cox administered a lethal dose of heroin and potassium chloride that ended Miss Boyles' life after begging him to end her suffering. In my opinion, it is more humane to allow a patient the right to end their life than to force them to suffer a painful and inevitable death. Next, I'm going to explain who should receive assisted suicide and why. Today's medical technology is extraordinary at sustaining the lives of individuals who have been in serious accidents or have had the chance of surviving diseases and illnesses. For example, a ventilator is a machine that can prolong someone's life by keeping oxygen flowing throughout the body by pushing air into the lungs. This machine can keep an individual alive who has a real probability of survival, but for a terminally ill patient, it is only a machine that extends their pain and suffering. Patients who are terminally ill should be given the right to end their life to put an end to their suffering, reduce the emotional impact and financial burden on their families, and to maintain their dignity. Now, I'm going to explain the argument for assisted suicide. Patients should have the ability to choose when to end their suffering. Patients should be able to leave this earth with their dignity and self-respect. Only the patients know how they feel and how the pain is impacting their mental and physical state. Ending a patient's agony can help with the grieving process of their family members and save them from financial bankruptcy due to expensive medicines and medical equipment that only prolongs their family's suffering. Finally, you know the arguments for why assisted suicide should be granted to terminally ill patients. Working in healthcare, I see suffering patients every day, and it saddens me. Working in healthcare, I see suffering patients every day, and it saddens me that I have to prolong their suffering. The right to assisted suicide should be legally granted to those who are terminally ill to allow them to leave this earth with their self-respect. I have now explained to you what assisted suicide is, the importance of assisted suicide, and the arguments for assisted suicide. So where do you stand on this topic? Can you live with yourself by denying a patient's freedom of choice by prolonging their pain and suffering? Thank you for listening.